Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out. Good afternoon. I'm seeing all the different names: Avita, Brianna, Christine, Christopher. Welcome, everyone. I hope you guys are doing okay this afternoon. I know we have a mixed group of students, so put it in the chat. Tell me who you guys are, what faculty you're from, what year group. Are you in postgrad? Are you in undergrad? Let me know. Let us know here in the World of Work team. You're seeing my face, but the World of Work team is in the background. So welcome everyone. It's great to see you all. Good afternoon, Karis. Good afternoon, Michaela. Hello. Shalini, good afternoon. Melina. Hi, Kyle. Good afternoon, Tristan. So tell me where you guys are from. What program of study, what faculty are you in? Science and technology, we have IT. Okay, great. Second year students in law, awesome. Okay, so this afternoon we are going to be talking about the virtual World of Work Recruitment Fair, right? This is going to be happening next week, and you guys are here to learn more about it and to be excited about it. So the first thing I want to do is share my presentation. So give me 1 second. Let's get started. Okay, great. So everyone should be able to see my presentation. Do let me know in the chat if you all are able to see it. And like I said, we are going to be talking about Recruitment Fair Preparation Workshop. This is what this session is about. And we are going to, as we know, preparation is key to these things. And so some of the things that we are hoping to cover this afternoon is, and guys, I'm having, okay, great. The slide is moving now. Awesome. So some of the things that we are hoping to cover, as you know, preparation is key. We want to talk about professional attire. We want to talk about your background in this world of virtual everything these days. You want to make sure that we have the right background going on. We want to talk a little bit about technology, your resume. That still remains, even though this fair is going to be virtual. And we want to talk a little bit about the virtual platform that the recruitment fair is going to be taking place on. But before we actually jump into all of this, I just want to remind some of you guys, some of you are probably already aware of this, but why work, right? For obvious reasons, experience, very key. And, I want to say at this point, any work experience is good experience. I know a lot of us, we want to work in the field that we're studying or in the career that we're aspiring to, but getting work experience is very important getting work experience under your belt is really important. And it helps to build those soft skills, right? And I don't like to call it soft skills. I prefer to say power skills because these are the skills that really kind of set us apart along with the technical skills that we learn in our degree program. So experience is really important to get those soft skills, whether it is in an office as a clerk or, working in a clothing store as a customer service rep. That's one of the reasons why we want experience. Another reason is competitiveness. We really want to say that I want to say that employers, they look for you to have work experience once you graduate, right? So, once you can get some of that experience under your belt, there are a lot of us out here looking for, job opportunities. So we want to increase our competitiveness by getting that work experience. Another reason, career planning, right? So a lot of times we have an impression of the type of job we want to work in, and then when we actually get to experience what that field might look like and feel like on a day-to-day basis, maybe we decide we don't want to work in that field, we want to make a switch. That actually happened to me. I did one of my internships. wanted to be a journalist, realized after I did the internship, it wasn't for me. So it's a really good tool in terms of career planning and deciding, is this the right job for me? Building a network, right? So this is super important. I mean, networking is often the main way a lot of jobs people find out about a lot of jobs, right? Who you know. Of course, you have to be qualified, right? But a lot of times people put their feelers out. A lot of employers reach out to us. They will never advertise a job in the papers sometimes, but they'll reach out to us directly. So networking is really important. You never know the people who you meet in your internship experience. They might be the ones to help you get that future job once you're ready to graduate. And of course, long-term employment. That's another reason why to, work, get an internship um, going, because sometimes when you've worked for the company while you're at university, when you're ready to graduate, they already know you. You have a massive advantage over everybody else. And if you've done a good job with them, you're already familiar with the organizational culture. It's almost a natural step for you to start working with them upon graduation. So that's some of the reasons why you always want to look out for work experience. And if you can't get the work experience, we know how our employment climate is right now. If you can't get the work experience, you can try to get the experience through volunteering. So that's always something you want to keep in the back of your mind as you guys, you know, prepare for the working world upon your graduation. So we're going to talk a little bit about the recruitment fair. Like I said, let's get some basic details out of the way. The date is April the 22nd, which is next week, Thursday. And the time, well, the location is virtual. So essentially, wherever you have a Wi-Fi connection, for most of you all, I'll probably be in your homes. And the time is from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So I really want to encourage everybody to try their best to make it to this recruitment fair. You don't have to be there for the entire period. You just need to devote a couple of hours during this period between 10 to 3. So maybe if your schedule doesn't permit you to go in the morning, you can go in the afternoon, like around lunchtime or a little after lunch, and just check out the fair and check out the fair. Some stuff was coming into the chat, so I was just taking a look. Check out the fair, see who's there, look for the different recruiters, and introduce yourself, get to know people, get to know recruiters, learn about different opportunities, right? Also, I want to encourage, a lot of times in the years that I've been working here and doing recruitment fair, a lot of times when I talk to the students, especially the younger ones, the year one students, the year two students, particularly the year ones, um, they don't think they're going to get the chance to be employed or a recruiter is going to take them seriously. I don't want you all to sort of have that mindset, be really positive. If anything, the recruitment fair is an amazing opportunity to start practicing talking to recruiters, breaking the ice. If you've never done an interview before, now is the time to just jump in and introduce yourself to recruiters, practice your elevator speech, practice your introduction, letting professionals know what your career plans are, short-term goals, long-term goals, what are your strengths, that type of thing. The more often you practice this and do this, the easier it's going to become. So I would definitely say, use the recruitment fair as an opportunity to just break that ice and just get accustomed and used to talking to people, right? So we're going to move on to our next slide. As soon as I can get it going. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the dress code for recruitment fairs. So in as much as it's virtual, like I said earlier, you're most likely going to be logging on from your home. I want you guys to resist the temptation to come dressed casually to your recruitment fair, right? This is a professional event. So we want you guys to dress professionally, right? You're going to be on camera some of the time during the fair when you're talking to different recruiters and you want to be able to give that impression of professionalism, right? So I just have two pictures. We're just going to talk around these pictures. This is what you all should be thinking of when we talk about dressing professionally. You can wear jackets, you can wear a long sleeve shirt with a tie for the guys. You ladies, you can wear a nice blouse. you want to look professional, right? You don't want to take it for granted that because you're at home, we're going to be in a relaxed mode. We're going to wear a t-shirt, or maybe even, God forbid, somebody thinking, their pajamas. We don't want to do anything like that, right? We want to ensure that you're professionally dressed. And of course, when you're professionally dressed, a lot of the times, how you feel, how you look is going to translate in your confidence and in the way you talk. So if you know you're casually dressed, you mightn't be on your toes, you mightn't be as sharp, when you're talking to recruiters. But if you are professionally dressed, you kind of sort of have on your, you know, you're in your professional mode, you have practiced, the different you've practiced, you've done your research in the different companies, you've practiced how you're going to introduce yourself. And so you just feel like, you're going to put your best foot forward and really be in that professionalism. I'm a young professional looking to, get my feet wet into the working world and, introduce myself to some potential recruiters. Introduce myself to recruiters for potential job opportunities. Sorry. So that's why you really want to make sure and dress the part, right? Of course, you're at home, so you could put on the slippers, right? But of course, if you were stepping out to go to an actual interview, you never know, maybe a follow-up interview from this fair will be a face-to-face interview. You want to make sure that you wear the right footwear and that type of thing. But definitely when you're at home, you want to dress fully. And I would actually recommend, even though people may not be seeing you from the waist go down, it's still good to wear something comfortable. You never know what could happen. Maybe you forget and you stand up and you have to do something. So it's always good to just dress professionally head to toe. Ladies, I know some of you like to put on your makeup. Make sure that it's light makeup, make sure that it's, conservative, make sure that, your jewelry is conservative, not large, chunky jewelry, but, you know, um, stoppers, small hoops, pearls, that type of thing. Um, you don't have to feel pressured to wear makeup, but you just want to make sure you have a neat and professional appearance, right? And just think about the entire job hunting process as one that is a formal process, right? So every aspect and every step of it is formal. The way you dress is going to be professional, business, formal wear. Your resume is going to be a formal document. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. And of course, when you speak to recruiters, how you introduce yourself, all of that is going to be formal. So that's always a good rule of thumb that I tell students, think of the entire process as a formal one. Guys, again, make sure you have your facial hair, your beard, everything marked off, looking slick, looking neat. Make sure you have your hair, cut, do that trim, whatever it is you guys do, get that trim. If you have locks, make sure that it's neat, it's pulled back in a neat ponytail. The key thing here is just being neat and professional. So we want to really, even though you're at home, even though you're probably going to be in your bedroom or perhaps in your living room or wherever you're going to be, you want to still treat it as if you're stepping out and going to an actual formal interview or you're going to an actual recruitment fair face to face. So you still want to treat it and take it that seriously, right? So moving on to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about professional backgrounds. And I really want you guys to be intentional about this. You can't really, uh, on the day of the fair, a couple minutes before, thinking about your background. You have to start thinking about this now and start making plans and putting things together, right? So I just want to share a few tips on what a good professional background can look like because we really want to encourage you guys to turn on your camera again. I know a lot of classes, a lot of meetings with Zoom, most people prefer to have their camera off, but definitely for the purposes of a recruitment fair and talking to professionals, you really want to make that good first impression. And the way to do that is to ensure that your camera's on. Let them see who you are. Let them see those facial expressions, your smile, everything that's just going to make you more personable, more likable, and make the employer more wanting, more likely to, reach out to you and probably do a follow-up interview or shortlist you in the group of students that they're looking for their internship opportunity, right? So one key thing about the background is you want to keep it simple, right? You don't want to have too much clutter in your background. So you want to clear a space. So guys, whatever is the range of the camera, you want to make sure that space is clear. Even if as soon as you step out of the camera range, you're going to stumble into a mess, at least when the camera is wherever the camera is showing, it looks clean, it looks simple, right? So you don't want to have a busy background because, of course, you want the employer to focus on you, right? So keep your background clear. Another tip is just be mindful of lighting. You don't want to be in a dark room and employers or recruiters are having a hard time seeing your face. You want to make sure that you're well lit, right? So think about your light source. If you are going to sit by a window, make sure you don't sit directly in front of the window because then you're going to be backlit and they're going to see a silhouette. So if you're going to sit by a window for natural light, and natural light is always probably the best type of light you want to use, make sure that it's to the side and it's coming in at an angle that really lights you up. You could also use a lamp if you have one. But you just want to make sure, just be mindful of whatever location you choose in your home, that you're well lit and they can see you. Show some personality. So when I say show some personality, what I really mean is if you can put like a desk behind you with a small plant, or if you are in a position, maybe like a bookshelf behind you, not too cluttered, of course, but maybe they could see some books that you're reading. Of course, make sure you've read the books just in case recruiters sees a book and it's like, oh my gosh, what's that book about? You should be able to talk about it, right? But anything like that is what I mean when I say show some personality. Of course, always keep in the back of your mind, it's a formal process. So you want to go too out there with, whatever aspects, they'll get to know you as time goes by, hopefully if you get hired. But showing personality is always a good thing. But I would also say if that's not possible, don't worry about that too much. Just having like a clean background, even if it's just like a plain wall, that can work well. That can work as well if that's what you're able to do, right? So don't feel like you have to have don't feel pressure to go and buy a plant, or just look around your house. Maybe there's an interesting vase, or maybe with you put some flowers in it or something, if just to kind of show a little bit of your personality. But like I said, a plain wall could work as well, right? And if all else fails, guys, you can also use a virtual background, right? So sometimes it's not possible for us to be able to, depending, it's not possible for us to show our actual backgrounds. So there's also the choice of a virtual background. But you do actually want to also consider what type of image you have as your virtual background. So an office image or even like a living room, those types of backgrounds work well. Again, just as the tips that I'm giving for your actual background, it would be the same thing for your virtual background. You want it to be simple. You don't want it to be cluttered or anything like that, and you want it to be professional. So like an office background or a living room, um, that type of background definitely works. For the virtual background, I would also say you definitely want to make sure there's a lot of contrast between yourself and the background, because if you blend in too much, they will have a harder time seeing you. And sometimes you'll start to disappear. I don't know if you've ever noticed that sometimes people start to disappear into the background when it's a virtual background. So you just want to make sure there's a lot of contrast between you and the background. So guys, what I would also say is save the fun backgrounds, like save the Game of Thrones background for when you're talking to your friends on Zoom. It's definitely not the type of background you want when you are doing your professional job hunting, right? And I just have an image here with some examples of people with their in a Zoom meeting, as we are in one right now, and some examples of them with the type of background that they have. So you just want to, like I said, keep it simple. Make sure you're well lit. If you're able to show a plant or a book or something, to just to show up a little bit of personality, that's always good. And you can use a virtual background, which virtually follows the same principles that we just discussed, right? So we are going to keep it moving and talk a little bit about technology. Right. So we want to get your tech right. And the thing about technology, sometimes it has a mind of its own. We can do everything that we can possibly do to make sure that the technology is working beforehand. And then on the day, it still doesn't work. But it's always good to troubleshoot beforehand just to make sure that everything is as it should be. So just a few tips again. Make sure that you have, well, I strongly recommend a hardwire connection. Now, that's not always possible, but if it is possible for you, I would say if you can plug in a network cable into your laptop or your desktop computer, I would say go ahead and do that if you're able to. If you're not, that's fine. But sometimes different parts of our homes have better Wi-Fi connection than others. So if you know that's the case with your home, maybe the part of your home where the Wi-Fi connection is really strong, you can set up your you can do your whole setup in that part of the home if that's possible, right? But just something to keep in mind. And if you can do it, I would definitely recommend that you do. Let's talk about devices. So you're going to be using your laptop, or you can possibly even use a tablet device. I would definitely recommend a laptop or a desktop so your hands would be free in terms of, not having to worry how it's going to get propped up or anything like that. Um, some key tips with your device, you want to make sure that all your updates are complete, right? Updates for Zoom, for example, and just your system updates as well. I mean, I've been in situations where I was talking to somebody and their laptop they just dropped. And it wasn't because of internet or electricity went or something like that. It was because their laptop had an automatic update and it just updated. And sometimes if we have a bit of an older laptop, it might take a little while to reboot. So you don't want in the middle of a great conversation with a recruiter, an automatic update just pops up and then your laptop just cuts off. And then it's like, oh my gosh, no, I didn't finish my conversation. So you definitely want to make sure your laptop is updated. I would say, shut it down like the day before, let it get some rest. Um, You never know if there's ever the occasion, if you're having a video chat with a professional, maybe you're talking about some of the work that you've done and then they ask to see it and you have to share your screen. I would say make sure your desktop is clear, make sure your browser is, again, up to date and all the tabs in your browser, professional, nothing strange or untoward. Just, make sure your laptop is just ready to be able to, um, log into the fair and communicate with recruiters in the different ways, right? So that's how I would prepare your device. The other thing you definitely want to do is run your audio test and your camera test. Make sure your camera is working. And when I say run your camera test, also like sit down in the space that you've created to be at the recruitment fair. Sit down, make sure you know what angle you want to um, put the camera, if you have to shift the desk, the laptop, or even the actual desk itself, depending, you want to make sure and do all of those things so that they have a good camera shot, that you fill up the screen properly. And you want to make sure and test your audio so that when you have to speak, they're going to be able to hear you. So all the settings on your computer, all the settings on Zoom, or browser settings. Sometimes we have all these security settings on our browsers that prevent us from sharing our camera or sharing our audio. So you just want to make sure and run through all of those things and test it out so that on the day you eliminate any issues. Issues can still happen, but at least if you've done a test before, maybe you could kind of figure out a lot faster what the problem could possibly be, and you can probably get a solution to that problem a lot quicker. So one of the things I would say in all of this intentional preparing for recruitment fair, virtual recruitment fair, one of the key things you definitely have to do is talk to your household, right? Let them know that you're going to be attending a recruitment fair next week, Thursday. You're looking at attending it from 1 to 3 p.m. And so this is the space that you want to use, because you want them to be aware, because they're going to need to partner and cooperate with you to help you to be successful, right? Or to execute your job hunting intention successfully, right? So, I mean, you don't want it that you're professionally dressed, you've sat up in your living room because you've determined this is the best space, and then maybe your sibling comes through, just woke up, bareback, rubbing their eye. You don't want, and then they're in the camera shot at the same moment when you're talking to a recruiter. You definitely don't want something like that to happen, right? So you need to let recruiters know. I mean, your family know, your household know that you're going to be participating in a recruitment fair during this time on this day, and just ask for their support and their help, right? So this is going to also help in terms of noises. So, you know, people in the home will know to be quiet. Now, all you can do is control what you can control. I mean, you won't be able to control if your neighbor's dog starts to bark, and make a sudden noise, but try your best to control what you can control on the day of the fair. So take the time to look around your space, figure out what you're going to wear, how you're going to do your makeup, style your hair, where you're going to place where you're going to do your whole setup to sit down and meet with recruiters and navigate the fair, talk to your family members, put everything in place so that it will run as smoothly as possible. So moving on to the next thing. So I want to talk a little bit about the resume, because that's a key part of the recruitment fair. You're going to be sharing your resume with recruiters. And when you register onto the virtual platform, one of the things we're going to be asking you to do is upload your resume. So we're going to talk a little bit about the resume, and the type of resume that we're going to talk about is a chronological resume. So this is the resume that's organized according to dates, outlining your work experience and your education and other experiences in reverse chronological order. So here's what a potential resume can look like, and this is just an example. And guys, what I will say is we had some resume writing boot camps earlier this year. So definitely after the session tomorrow, we're going to be emailing you, and we'll definitely send the link to the resume bootcamp recording, which goes into a lot more detail in terms of how to put together your resume, right? We are also going to be having an all-day critiquing session, which I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But in the meantime, this is what a resume, this is an example of a resume, and I'm just going to, it's like an anatomy of a resume, and we're going to go through it from the top to the bottom, and you can use this as a guide to help you put together your resume. So at the top of the resume, the key and most important thing that we have going here is the header, right? So this is the name, the address, and contact information that you will put in your resume. Some key things to note: it's always good to have a line coming under your personal information, because it just separates the resume. It makes it easier for the eye to read. Guys, recruiters spend about 7 seconds gleaning a resume before they put it in the yes or the no pile. So anything that makes a resume easier to read is really important. So separating the header from the body of the resume is an easy way. With that line, it's an easy way to just cue the recruiter. This is their information at the top here, and this is the body of their resume below their header. So you're gonna put your name, your address, and your address is optional. Some people choose to leave it out, and if you feel more comfortable leaving out your mailing address, that's fine. You wanna put your contact information, and you wanna make sure and put your email address, right? And your email address, you wanna ensure that it's professional. Guys, I hear from recruiters all the time: Sexy B 2000, Mr. Handsome. Those are not the type of professional email addresses that are appropriate for a resume. A standard professional email address is your first name, some version of your first name and your last name with the email handle. And you could also use your student email address if your personal email address um, isn't quite up to scratch just yet, right? Something else you can put in your header, if you have a LinkedIn profile, you can definitely put the link for that in your header as well, and include that information, right? If you are applying for international type, um, an international type position, and you would put Trinidad as a country, and you would put, the 1868. But if it's all local, then you don't have to put Trinidad or the 1868. Just the regular phone number can work, or or wherever you're from. If you're in Barbados or in Jamaica or one of the other islands, you can, if it's local, you can just leave it where the information is local. But if it's international or regional, then you can add just the country and the international area code to go with the phone number. So the next part of the resume, another key important aspect, is your objective. And I have here on the side objective or profile. So with the objective or profile, um, in this example we have here, it's the objective. So an objective is a pretty straightforward statement, just saying that you're interested in a particular position, um, in that particular organization. People who have a little bit less work experience, we often encourage them to write an objective. And as you grow and you gain more experience and more skills, you can then put a profile as the next thing after your header instead of an objective. And a profile is one way of thinking of a profile is that it's a summary of a cover letter. It would highlight key skills that you would want the employer to know about, particularly if you were applying for a specific job. It would highlight the key skills that that job is asking for. So it's targeted, it's very individual. And, I always tell students to avoid cliche when doing their profiles. So cliche would be things like I'm a hard worker, um, a good written and oral communicator. If you can lift your profile and somebody else use it, that means it's too general. And a good tip when you're writing your profile is you can save it for last and let the body of the resume sort of guide you in terms of what are some of the key standout things in the body of your resume that you can include in your profile to make it a bit more individualistic and more reflective of you and the particular position that you're applying for, right? So after your profile objective, you have education. And education is really important part, especially for internships, entry-level graduate positions. You always want to have your education come directly after. And like I said, it's the chronological resume, so it's going to be putting the dates are really important. That's one thing. And we always put the most recent thing first. And the reason for that essentially is recruiters, they want to see where you are now and then sort of gauge where you're coming from. So a lot of times students don't put their university degree because they haven't received their certificate, but that's actually not correct. You want to put University of the West Indies, and how you treat with the fact that you haven't gotten the certificate as yet is you just put the year that you started. And in this case, the person, this resume, they put present. You could also put your expected year of graduation. So if you're expecting to graduate in 2022, it's fine to say 2018 to 2022 if that's what you expect when you expect to graduate at that point when you're doing your resume. So some key things that you definitely want to share in your education section on the University of the West Indies is, of course, you put the name of the institution where it is, and you put the degree, the name of the degree, BSc in psychology. If you're doing a minor, then we definitely encourage you to put the minor as well. Minor, if it's communications or Spanish, you can include that. Um, and then another thing that you can also include is your GPA. If you have a GPA score of 3.0 and above, I definitely encourage students to put that in, and you can put that in the next line directly under the name of the degree, and you can put 3.0 or 3 point whatever the GPA is. I would say, however, if you don't have the 3.0, that's okay. Just leave it out. No worries, right? And then for the next section, in this particular resume, this person did a certificate in business management and technology. So they put their, again, they put the name of the organization, where it is, the dates, and then they put the name of the certificate. For a lot of us, that might be CAPE, right? So if it was CAPE, then we would put CAPE, the acronym, in all caps, and we could put the core subjects that we did in CAPE, maybe sociology, economics, and geography. No need to necessarily list the mandatory courses that everybody does, but you can put CAPE, colon, and then list going across the core subjects. Or if you like, you can just put 5 subjects completed, right? And then the next section here, where they did their CSAC, they've just included, again, the same format with the institution, and they've included the number of subjects they've completed. So at the CSAC stage, you don't have to put grades or anything like that. You don't have to list the CSAC subjects. Just seeing how many you completed is sufficient enough, right? I would also say, similarly with CAPE, we don't include Unit 1, Unit 2, the grades and that type of thing. You can just either list going across the core subjects, or you could just say 5 subjects completed if that's what you prefer to do. Another key thing to also notice, if you did CSAC and CAPE in the same institution, you don't have to put the institution twice. You can just put the institution once, but you'll put the entire period. So Form 1 to Upper 6, whatever that period is, over here on the date section, right? So I hope everybody is following so far. I know there are quite a few questions, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. The next section is in after education. The next section often is work experience, professional experience, or volunteer experience. Of course, this is something that's going to differ from person to person. Some people will have work experience but may not have volunteer experience, so it would just be the work experience. Some people, it might be vice versa. In this example that I have here before you guys, this person doesn't have work experience, but they actually have volunteer experience, right? So they've gone ahead and outlined the different types of the different places in which they did their volunteer experience, and they've also outlined the skills that they used while at that volunteer experience. And if it was work experience, we would follow the same format, but instead it would just be your work experience. So let's just take a little bit of a closer look at what the format and how they went about doing this. So again, you always want to keep the format the same, right? So they put the organization that they did their volunteer experience, and they have their dates lined up. What's key to note, guys, is that these sections are very clearly they're very easy to see. So we see the objective section. It's almost like blocks, right? We see the objective section. We see the education section. We see the subsections in each section very clearly. So that's a good way to know that your resume so far is on your right track in terms of layout and formatting. Your sections are clear, easily identifiable, and easy to read. The recruiter's eyes are not kind of like searching and wondering where's the next thing. So the volunteer section, again, is pretty clear. We see it, and then we see the 2 places very clearly, 2 blocks, adult development and aging, lab TT, and then we see assistant football coach at Little Gators, right? So another key component that we are seeing here is the skills that they have used, right? And they're basically using a formula, right? They started off with the verb, transcribed data for specific study, operated SPSS software. So they start off with a verb, and I would encourage you guys to go online and Google power resume verbs or resume verbs that make your resume pop, anything like that, and you're going to see different examples of the types of verbs that you can start your resume with that is going to make, well, I shouldn't say start your resume with, but the types of verbs that you can start your sentence when you're talking about the skills that you used, um, that's going to make your resume pop, right? So operated, transcribed, liaised, managed, those are the types of verbs that coordinated, designed, created. Those are the types of verbs that you start off with and it makes your resume pop. And I will say the reason why you start off with a verb is because it gets straight to the point. I'll say it over and over again. The recruiter is not spending a lot of time on your resume. So you really, the verb is an action word. It gets straight to the point. It tells your recruiter, this is what Jane Smith was doing when she volunteered at the Adult Development and Aging Lab, right? So it's just a quicker read and it's powerful. It sounds more powerful when you read it, when you write it with the verb first, right? So the person has bulleted it, single spacing, and it's clear and it's easy to see, right? So you definitely want to keep that format in mind when you're putting together your resume, right? And also, I keep on saying the skills that she used, right, in this person's resume. So always think about the skill that you used at that particular job. You know, sometimes you might actually need to step away from the actual resume document, maybe pull out a piece of paper and do some brainstorming and just kind of write down every single thing that you did in that workplace and start thinking about, okay, what were these skills, right? Organized, managed my time, you know, demonstrated good people skills, you know, I would recommend it highly. Do a brain dump, think about everything you've done in that particular job or volunteer experience, for example, and think of it in terms of the skills that you use so that when you come back to the resume document to write out those bullet points, starting off with your power verbs, you're going to be highlighting that skill that you use that the employer is looking for. And I want to say if you are applying to a specific job, you want to make sure that the skills match the job vacancy that you're looking at. I also want to say, again, because the recruiter is not spending a lot of time on your resume, you want to put the keys, you know, put the most relevant skills at the top, come down, right? So that's the approach that you take when you're doing your work experience. In this person's case, their volunteer experience, right? So moving on to the next section of the resume, we have leadership skills. This person has created a section called leadership skills, which some people might have a leadership skills section, some people may not. It just really depends on what your experiences have been, right? Maybe for some people, it might be extracurricular activities. For other people, it might be academic achievements, right? But it just really depends on what you as the individual are trying to highlight in your resume. So for this person, they chose to say leadership skills because they had different leadership positions in different clubs, right? So they were the secretary of Freedom Hall, they were student council treasurer, um, at Open Campus, and they also were student council vice president when they were in high school. So they chose to highlight the fact that they've had a few leadership roles, right? And we go down to the other section of the resume, and we are seeing they have additional skills and certificates. Again, this really depends on the person and what experiences they have. So for them, they did one of our career workshops, executive transition workshop. So some of you might be familiar with it if you're in second year and you're currently doing that workshop, that program. And they also did a CPR and first aid certificate at UE, right? And they put the years that they completed those things. So it really depends on um, it really depends on what you have, what experiences you have to share, right? So for different people, it could look like different things. And it's always good to list your computer skills, the programs that you are familiar with and you're good at. So this person put SPSS and they put it at the top because, for them, that's something that they want the recruiter to see immediately. I know SPSS. And then they have Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I see a quick question in the chat asking about dance certificates. Yes, if you have been involved in dance or you're involved in a lot of creative cultural activities, maybe it's dance, maybe it's music, you can definitely put it there. Employers they want to capture, you want to be able to show a balanced person, somebody who is going to school, somebody who has had a little bit of work experience, somebody who has developed other interests outside of school and work. So you definitely can include things like your dance certificate in your resume, right? So if you're part of an NGO as well, um, how and where do you place it? So I would say if you're part of an NGO, that might be volunteer experience, right? And if you want to highlight the skills that you use while you're at the NGO, you can do it as we have it here. But depending on how much room you have, because I do want to also recommend that you keep your resume to one page. If you say have work experience and volunteer experience, and you've decided to expand on your work experience, and you just want to list your volunteer experience, you might just list the name of the NGO. If you have a role, maybe a position, you might list the position and then you might put the year, right? So it really depends. I want you guys to think of your resume as a very customizable document. It is always changing. It's never static. With every um, employer, potential employer you send your resume to, you have to be thinking about how do I change the information in my resume to suit this particular employer or to suit this particular job, right? So that is some of the considerations that you have to make when you are doing your resume, right? So I want to move on, right? Like I said, that was a snapshot, just some basics on resume and how to put it together. And we're going to share the link to our bootcamp so you all could get even more detailed information. And we're going to have an opportunity for you all to meet with one of us um, to have your resume looked at, right? So there are some common mistakes that people make with their resume that I just wanted to highlight to you guys as we move on. The word resume. So a lot of times people put resume at the top of the resume in the center and then they put their personal information. So I want to tell you all don't do that, right? The recruiter knows they're looking at a resume. We don't need to say resume, right? So you don't need to put heading, the word resume as your heading. Sometimes people put the date that they did the resume. You don't have to do that, right? Sometimes people like to include their personal information like the day that they were born. You don't include personal information of that nature. You don't include your ID number. You don't include your height or your weight. This is not Tinder, guys. You do not need to say whether you are single, married, or anything like that. Your religion and the general pattern here, that type of information, generally speaking, employers do not need to know. What they need to know is your skills and your qualifications, right? And if you can do the job based on the skills and qualifications that they have outlined, and you now showing and telling them that you have those skills. Of course, if you want to join the police service or you want to join certain areas, certain fields, they do have height requirements, age requirements, but those are very specific scenarios. And in those scenarios, we know about them and we we allow for that. But just generally speaking, applying for, you know, different jobs, in different organizations, whether it's accounting, office jobs, that type of thing, you don't need to give the type of information that I have up here. So definitely don't need to include it. On your resume, I would say do not put your picture. There are some people who do put it. It's not wrong, but I would still say the current trend here in Trinidad is recruiters are not looking to see your picture on your resume. It could take up space. Let's just save the room to include as much information about your skills as possible. However, the photograph is becoming important. It's becoming important if you're going to create your LinkedIn account. We did a workshop on LinkedIn. So there, your photograph is actually important. And you always want to have a professional photo, dressed in professional wear, taking a professional shot. So you definitely want to you do need to take a picture, but not for your resume, but for your LinkedIn profile, right? So that's something to bear in mind. References. You don't actually need to include your references in your resume. The most you can do is at the bottom center, references available upon request. But if you're running out of space, or even if you're not necessarily running out of space, you don't have to put it, right? If you've reached that stage with the employer where they they've spoken to you and they want to now kind of start doing their due diligence, then they'll ask you for the references, right? And just some tips about references. One, please tell your referees that you would like them to be a reference. Sometimes sometimes you don't say, and an employer can call, and because nobody said anything, then they're sort of like, they don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes you may have asked somebody to be a referee, and maybe that was like 6 months ago, and now you're starting to apply. Just send them call them, email them, let them know, remind them that you're their referee, that they're your referee, and that, you're starting to send things out so they may get a phone call, right? So that's one thing. Another thing with references, good referees are people who, like, maybe a lecturer, and I really encourage you guys to get to know your lecturers. You have to, right? When you ask for feedback on assignments and, different things that the coursework that you'll do, you should get to know your lecturer. Pinpoint a lecturer, make it like a goal or a strategy. Okay, this lecturer is going to be my referee, and make sure you're able to get a recommendation from a lecturer. That's a good recommendation. Also, if you've worked somewhere and you can ask your supervisor to be a referee, that's also a good choice. So having at least two referees, a lecturer and maybe a former employer, or if you've done a lot of volunteer work somewhere, you can use that person as a referee as well. Right? Um, Generic objective. Well, it should really say generic profile. Definitely. We spoke about that already. You don't want your profile to be too um, cliche. It must be very individual and tailored towards you. Some optional additions. We spoke a bit about this already. Each person is different. If you have, maybe you're a national scholarship winner, you've been on the dean's list, you've won academic prizes, you can have a section like that on your resume. Activities, whether you're involved in sporting activities, dance, you can have a section where you have maybe extracurricular activities on your resume. If you are multilingual and you want to demonstrate that, you can put that. You can have a section called languages if you have multiple languages, or maybe you have language skills and maybe a couple other skills, and you want to just have a section called additional skills where you list those skills. You can have a section like that in your resume. You can include your interests, not watching TV, but, like, if you like to hike, you do, outdoor activities, you can include some of those interests on your resume. So we're going to be having all-day resume critique session this Thursday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. For those of you all who are in attendance today, you all will get the Zoom link. It's going to be walk-in, and you all will either be in small group sessions or you all will be having a one-on-one critique. So come with your resume prepared. If you don't have a resume, try to put one together based on what you've learned today. Try and put one together. And you come with your resume, and you can either be in a small group session or a one-on-one session, and we will help you with your resume, right? So it's walk-in. Um, so bear that in mind, and we're going to be working with you guys to get your resume ready. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about navigating the recruitment fair, right? And in order to do so, I'm just going to switch my screen, right? So just bear with me for a minute or so, or a minute or less. Right. So here I have, in as much as we are still in the process of building out our virtual environment, there's still some things that I think would be good for you guys to know in preparing for virtual recruitment fair. So one of the first steps would be to register on the platform itself. Some of you all have been registering, well, not registering, but showing an interest by giving us some basic information, which is very important. So I would say if you have done that, that is actually the first step. Sorry, guys. That is actually the first step. But once the platform is ready, and you're going to be getting that link very soon, you're going to want to actually register on the platform, right? So it's pretty straightforward. You're going to click on the link that says register, and it's just going to ask you for some key student information: your name, your first name, your last name, your student email address, your student ID, um, key information like that. Okay, this is a closed event, right? So only UE students, St. Augustine campus students, are able to participate, right? So when you click on that registration link, it's going to be asking some key questions that only as a St. Augustine campus student you're going to be able to answer, and that's the first step, right? Once you register for the event, you'll get a confirmation email, and that confirmation email is going to, it's going to say, thank you, we've received your registration, and it's going to give you your credentials to log into the event. What I would say is, if you all are having trouble registering when that link to the platform comes to you guys, if you're having trouble registering, you would need to get in contact with us as soon as possible. Write us at career.place@sta.ue.edu to let us know. We can only help you if you reach out to us and you communicate with us, right? So that's if you're having issues, but I don't really think it would be an issue. But that's one important part in terms of how you register for the events. Logging in is pretty straightforward. Like I said, when you register, you will get an email with your login credentials, and then next to the registration link, there's a login link, and that link is gonna just ask you for that login information, and then you'll be able to log into the platform, and you'll be able to enter into the virtual environment where you're gonna have different spaces carved out, well, designed, built out, where you will be able to, you will be literally inside the fair, and you'll be able to navigate. So there's a lobby area, there's a um, there's the exhibitors area, and when I say the exhibitors area, that's the area where the companies are going to have their virtual booths, and then there's going to be the area for live sessions, right? So I just want to show you, for example, when you go inside, there are different ways that you would be able to communicate and speak to potential recruiters. I just want to talk a little bit about that. You're going to actually, before I do that, let me just I'm just going to share like an example of what the lobby area could potentially look like, right? Give me 1 second. I'm just going to stop my share. So like I said, we're still in the process of building out the environment, but this is just to give you an example. Like once you're logging, you're going to come into a space that is going to sort of have signage that's going to guide you to different parts of the live environment. So there'll be like an information desk where you would be able to ask us, the staff, questions if you're lost or if you want to get any type of information. And then there'll be signage taking you to where all the company booths are going to be, and you're just going to be clicking on that, and then it's going to take you to where all the company booths are. And then there's going to be another sign where it's going to take you to live webinar sessions, right? So I just wanted to kind of show you an example of what that could possibly look like, right? I want to also add that you don't have to download any software or anything like that. This is sort of like it's almost like a website. You're just going to be navigating through the website and clicking on different things, right? So no software required, no downloading or anything like that required, no special, technology needed except for your laptop and a good Wi-Fi connection, right? Just to give another example in terms of the just to give another example in terms of the area where all the companies are going to be located. So again, this is just a visual, just to kind of give you all a sense. You would see the different booths lined up with the names of the companies or the company logos on the mat. And essentially, like I said, it's a virtual environment. You're just going to be clicking on it, whichever one you want to visit, and then it's going to take you to a close-up view of that booth space, right? And in that booth space, um, you'll see different. Once you get that close up of, once you click on the booth, you're going to get that close up of the space, and you'll see where the company will have their job vacancies. You'll be able to see what vacancies those are. You'll see documents that the company has uploaded, videos that the company has uploaded, and a description of the organization. And you'll be able to chat. There's a chat link on the booth itself. There's also a chat link in the bigger live environment where you could chat with potential recruiters. And I just want to show you what that would look like, the chat feature. So you can speak to recruiters one-on-one, or you can speak to recruiters in a group, right? So essentially, in the wider environment, you would click on the chat feature. That's one place you could do it. Or if you click on the booth and you get the close-up of the booth, there will also be a link carrying you into the chat space. It's the same chat space it'll be carrying you into. And when you look at the chat space on the left-hand side, you're going to see individuals, and then you'll also see chat rooms because each company has its own chat room. So that's when the group chats essentially take place, right? When you go into the chat room, if you click on company A, Nestle, for example, you click on there, just gave you a hint there. You click on the you click on their chat room, you and other students plus Nestle representatives are going to be in that room and you all can have a group chat, right? You would also be able to um, send a direct message to an company representative from Nestle itself. So essentially, this is what the close-up of the booth is going to look like for it. Let's just say this is an example. And guys, I just want to say this gentleman is in jeans and a t-shirt, and we've already spoken about dress code, right? So nobody is going to be in a jeans and a t-shirt, well, at least a t-shirt for the recruitment fair, right? So like you will see the image of the booth, the chat feature, and right. So this is the section I wanted to take you guys to. So essentially, there are different places where you'll be able to see, and this is very user friendly. There are different places where you'll be able to see different things. So you'll see chat rooms and you'll see all the different companies. And then you will see like individual names below the chat rooms that you'll be able to see, okay, this person is from this company and you can send them a direct message. But once you're in the booth itself, the only names that you're going to see there are the company representative names. So you don't have to like worry if you're clicking on a different person from a different company. Once you've clicked on the chat in the booth, you will see it'll take you to this environment and you will see the names of the persons, the different company representatives from the chat. Let me see if I can find out. Yeah. So we'll be sending all that information very soon. You will see the link to log in and to join. And it's very familiar. I mean, we all sort of know what it's like to be in a group chat, say on WhatsApp. We know we're familiar with video chats. So I would say you can't do a video chat in a group chat, but you can do the video chat in a one-on-one chat. So when you click on the person's name, right? So when you click on the individual's name, this image will pop up and then you will see where you can do an audio call or you could do a video call, right? And again, you know, for those who can, you have the cameras on your laptops or your desktop, I really encourage you to turn on the camera. It's going to give you a bit of an advantage in terms of connecting with the recruiter and being able to make that good first impression, right? So that's why we went through how to prepare our space and how we want to make sure we look when we are doing when we're getting ready to talk to recruiters, because we want to put our best foot forward, right? So those are just some of the features in terms of the chats. Also, there will be live sessions. Well, I shouldn't say live sessions. There will be webinars. So some companies are going to be doing webinars. Some of them will be pre-recorded. Some of them might be live, right? And essentially, how you get to a webinar is in the same lobby area that I showed you. There will be a link to an auditorium. So all webinars are in auditorium. So if there's a company that you're interested in, you want to go to their webinar. You want to learn about that organization. You want to learn about that company. What are they going to be talking to you about, right? So that would be something that you would want to do, right? So I would say on the landing page, which is the page where you register and where you would log in from, you will see, all the different companies and all the different presentations that are going to be taking place. You will also, when you go in to the live environment and you click on the auditorium in the lobby area, you click on the auditorium link, you're going to come into just like, LRC auditorium or one of the auditoriums in teaching and learning complex. You're going to come into a virtual space like that, and then you will be able to click on the screen and see the agenda, and you'll be able to see what companies are making presentations, what's the topic and what time, and then you'll be able to click on, there'll be a live link for each presentation that will take you into a virtual space, just like where we are now, where you'll be able to be part of a presentation. And of course, if, for the live presentations and for the recorded live presentations, which you'll be able to ask, there will be recruiters on hand to answer questions, right? And you'll be able to ask questions as well. So those are like some of the key things to know about and be mindful of in the live environment, right? So I'm going to stop my share and I actually just want to go through very quickly. I'm looking at the time. Some tips for the Recruitment Fair platform. Sorry, that's not supposed to happen. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Sorry, guys. But I just wanted to go over some tips in terms of the Recruitment Fair. So we will be sharing with you all which companies are coming to the fair. You're going to see what vacancies they have, right? So that's a document that you all will look out for. It's going to be coming out in the upcoming days. So that's going to help you to plan which companies you are going to be visiting in the virtual platform. You want to make sure and prepare your resume to fit each company, in as much as when you upload your resume, when you register on the platform, you're going to be uploading a resume that's sort of like a magnet resume, a catch-all resume. But when you are meeting with individual recruiters that you have targeted and you have said, okay, I am going to go after these companies, you want to make sure you have your targeted resume ready for them. And when you're talking to them, you can let them know, I am sending you this specific resume. We've spoken about it. This is sort of like a recap, guys. You want to make sure and dress professionally. You want to develop a strategy. And what do I mean by that? I want to say, if your top company, let's just go back to Nestle, if your top company is Nestle, or if your top company is Republic Bank, or if your top company is going to be at the fair, you probably don't want to visit them first. You probably want to warm up, practice a little bit with some other companies, and then hit the companies that you know you want to target seriously. So kind of shake those nerves off, kind of get warmed up, practice a little bit, and then go for the company. So that's what I mean when I say develop a strategy. For some of you all, if you have the entire day free, you might say, you know what, maybe the earlier I get there, the fresher the recruiters would be. I'm going to try to get there earlier, right? If you have that ability to get there at any point in the day, that's another way of thinking about developing a strategy. Prepare to talk, right? You want to be also mindful of not coming across rude. Just like in an actual face-to-face recruitment fair, you may be talking to a recruiter with a group of other students. Similarly, for the virtual, you will be talking to a recruiter with a group of other students, but in the group chats, you all will be typing. So remember to be engaging, but not to take up all the time and all the space talking. But of course, everybody else is super quiet and you have your questions, by all means, talk. But, you just want to strike that balance of being respectful, giving other people an opportunity to talk, and making sure that you are ready to talk. Do not be shy, reach out to recruiters and talk to them one on one, turn on your camera, have that type of interaction. Network at the fair, and when I say network, particularly, even if you're a first year student or a second year student, still get to know the recruiter. If they're there next year, you could say, remember me, we spoke last year. You gave me all these tips about your organization. I did all my research. I'm really keen. I'm hoping that you will give me an opportunity to work with you if you didn't get an opportunity the first time around, right? Those things happen. I went to a training session some time ago, and the recruiter was saying that they spoke to a student like that at a recruitment fair. The first time they didn't get through, but the student asked the recruiter, what do you look for? What do you want in a person? What are your values? What would you recommend I do in the next academic year as I prepare for the next recruitment fair? And the recruiter told them the student did all of those things. And when they came back the second time around, they were ready, they were prepared, and they got the internship. So talk to recruiters, get to know them, find out about their organizations, find out what they want. So don't just think about it as short term, I'm trying to get something this summer, but play the long game as well. Because if the opportunity doesn't come up this time around, it could come up the next time around. So network, right? And follow up with recruiters. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times we send out our applications, we had a good conversation, and then 1 week passes, 2 weeks passes, three, four, nothing happens. And then your mom or your dad might say, well, what happened? You were so excited. You talked to this person, and it's like, well, they never got back to me. Follow up, 2 weeks after, make sure you get their information, their contact information. It's just like sharing like a business card. Make sure, those recruiters that you really feel like you felt like you had a good conversation with, reach out to them 2 weeks later. Say, remind them of a point in the conversation that we discussed. Remember when we spoke about X, Y, and Z, and reach out to them and see, what's going on, remind them that you're there. And I mean, you can't bombard them too much. Hopefully after you follow up, they will reach back out to you, and you will be able to continue the conversation, or at least know whether or not they are interested in, interviewing you again or hiring you, or maybe they might say, we've gone a different direction or something, but at least you would know. So follow up, right? So those are some of my tips. Um, I know we have a lot of questions, right? So I'm just gonna jump in with those questions. Yes, yes, I would really appreciate that. I'm not sure if can you guys. Okay, guys. Okay, guys. So we're gonna do some
Okay, what about
questions.
now?
Yes, we are hearing
Okay,
you. Okay, we were having some audio issues, but Sabrina is here with us. That's great.
okay,
So
great. Sorry about that, guys. So let's get to the first question. First of all, thanks, Nandi. And first question is actually a little bit about the atmosphere of the interview for the where the student is located. So, for example, a student wants to know where he can go, or are there any suggestions on where he can go besides home? Somewhere preferably with AC and good Wi-Fi, because if it's very hot at his home, and if he has to wear a suit, it could be really hot. And just to throw in something, a similar question with respect to your background as well. A lot of students are asking about the color of the wall, pink, green, bright pink, green. What's a suitable color for the wall background?
Okay. Okay, so in terms of, I'm hearing myself echo. Okay, so hopefully, okay, I think it's sorted out. So in terms of location, right? So I would say if your home, if you feel like your home is not the best place, maybe if you can go by a relative or a close friend, for a couple of hours, make those arrangements. In terms of dress code, maybe not wear the jacket, just a long sleeve shirt with the tie should be okay. And if you have a fan, you can have that fan on you, but make sure the distance that the fan is not too close where it's sort of messing with your audio, because then that would be difficult to speak to potential recruiters if the fan is like super close and blowing and affecting your audio. So that would be my suggestion in terms of try to gauge, in advance, maybe some of the places where you could, possibly go to by a relative or a good friend just for a couple of hours where you would be able to do the recruitment fair. But of course, if you're switching locations, you want to make sure that all the backgrounds, information and tips that I shared earlier, that you sort of have that covered, right? So you want to make sure you're able to do those things. Um, the other question in terms of color of the wall, is that the virtual background or is that the actual background?
I'm thinking, Andy, maybe we could address both, but I'm thinking they mean maybe in their own, like if they're in their bedroom and they have like a really bright highlighted wall or something like that. That's what I'm thinking.
Um, I would say just that tip about the whole process being a formal one. If you can have a more muted color wall, if it's possible, then I would say go ahead and lean in that direction. Virtual backgrounds as well, keep it neutral, keep it conservative, you know, um, light colored, like a white wall, or, nothing too, um, just something where the recruiter is focused on you and listening to you and what you have to say as you sell yourself.
Okay, thanks for that, Nandi. There are a few questions that I'm seeing here with regard to registration for the fair. So, for example, maybe if you could talk a little bit about if the deadline has passed, if they can still register, if they registered last night, um, and if they haven't gotten an answer to an email after registering. Just maybe a little brief detail about the registration process again.
Okay, sure, no problem. So you would have received an email asking you all, particularly those of you all who are in first year, second year, and have not been participating in the Will of Work program, because that has been for final year students. You would have received an email asking you all to fill out a simple form where you're just giving us some of your information. That is an essential part of the getting on board with the recruitment fair process. So once you've done that, that's important. The next part of that getting on board process is when we share the link to the environment, the landing page. Like, it's going to be like a website. You're going to be in your browser, you're going to click on the link, it's going to open up in Chrome, and you're going to see register. We want you to register there as well, right? So I would say that first initial link that you've seen in your emails that we started sending out last week, make sure you do that. There's a deadline attached to that, which is today, I believe. You want to make sure and and fill out that information. If you're a final year student and you already have registered for the World of Work program, then we already have your information. So you're just waiting for the link to the platform where you would then fill in that registration information. So it's a two-part process. It might feel a bit redundant, but honest, that's the way we have to do it in order to ensure that it is for St. Augustine campus students. Um, oh, the deadline was yesterday. Sorry. Because yesterday was Monday. So you wanna, if you, I would still say, um, even though the deadline was yesterday, go ahead and fill it out today for sure. Um, that link that's in the email.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. So there's some very specific questions now that we could get into. One of the questions, what if I have no professional experience? What can I do to stand out? And there's another one with respect to if students, get some free courses or participate in free courses, but they do not have any certificates, can they include that on their resume? So free courses, can they include it on their resume? And if they
Courses.
have no professional experience, what can they do to stand out on the resume?
Okay, so I'll tackle the one with the professional experience. And we all have to start somewhere. So everybody at one point didn't have any professional experience, and that's an okay place to be. What I would say is all the students here, we all have a university experience. So I would say draw from your experience as a student here on campus. Um, you can call it, for example, a heading called academic experience, and maybe you can have a section where you discuss maybe the fact that you worked with a group on a project. You can, if you have a final year project, for example, or you've had like a significant project since you've been here in second year or first year that you want to expand on because you developed a lot of experience, you can use that as well. If you're a science and tech student, maybe biology, biochem, and you want to highlight the fact that you have some lab skills, right? So you could create a section called lab skills and maybe talk about some of the um, technical skills that you have, working in a lab. So I would say if you don't have work experience, volunteer experience, draw from your academic experience. And some of the headings that you would use would be maybe a broad heading like academic experience or final year project, lab skills, lab work. Um, Maybe under academic experience, you might split it into group assignments. A subheading, you might have a subheading called group assignments, and you might kind of talk a little bit about that using your verbs, and then you might have another subheading called lab experience, for example, and that is the direction I would go if you didn't have any work experience or volunteer experience. And the next question, free courses, lots of free courses happening. Not all of them give you a certificate. I would say you could still include it. Just kind of put the name of the course and where you accessed it. Um, and that's the best that you could do. I don't know if um in terms of free, you might put it under a heading called certificates, additional skills, certificates and training. It could be a heading like that, and you can put the name of the course, um, and the the source, like if it's LinkedIn Learning or maybe Skillshare had whoever is the person who organized the course where you picked it up from, you could include that.
Thanks, Andy. So
Sure, no problem.
this question, or these two questions, has to do with work experience. Do employers take into account experience gained from active participation and experience gained from running your own business, whether it is relative to the field you are going into or not. And if someone cannot remember the date when they started or finished working, what can they do?
Okay. So in terms of the side hustle, a lot of us have it. A lot of us are budding entrepreneurs, and that's definitely something that we encourage here on campus. You can include it in your resume. You might have a section called entrepreneurship or personal projects, and there you might say you would put maybe the name of your business and say, founded or co-founded, and then talk about some of the um, skills that you developed, you know, bringing a business, having a business running, if that makes sense. You might call it depending on how developed your business is. If you've gotten people to help you do certain things, and you had to like come up with suppliers and distribution and all of those things, you could share that it could come under maybe leadership, because being a self-starter and somebody who is driven and disciplined to bring a business to fruition, those are some leadership skills that you want to display, that you have. You could also include it. You could take that angle as well. If you don't remember, to go on to the next question, if you don't remember your start dates, that's really important. You need to. I would say, try to find out the start and the end date. Even if you don't remember you don't have to put the day, the month, and the year. Even if it's just generally in August, you don't remember what day in August. You don't have to, you could put August 2018 to November 2019 if that was the period. But you really need to figure out when. So, ask your friends or your family, or maybe, I don't know if you have to go back to the organization and find out from HR, but you need to get the date, the start and the end date for your work experience.
And what about Nandi? If so, we have an issue where someone may not remember when they started working, right? But what about if they do not want to state the name of the establishment where they worked? Is it okay to do so while still stating what you did?
Okay, that's a tricky question.
Mhm.
Well, what my question would be, what is the reason why they don't want to state the name? If maybe they were fired, and they feel like the person or maybe the organization is not going to have anything favorable to say, then if you don't want to say where you worked, then you won't, then you'll have to leave it out. um but and maybe you use those same skills in another context, I don't know, but if you don't want to put the name of the organization, and then everything that comes with the name of the organization, the experience that you had, um, you won't be able to include that. Because something that recruiters do is, apart from referees, they could possibly, they do want to verify that you actually worked here. Um, if you put, you worked at a particular place, so it is possible that they may just want to verify from the organization if you actually worked there when you said you did.
Thanks, Sandy. I think so too. I mean, according to you, if I would want to know as well the reason why they would want to leave the name of the organization out, and if there is, for example, a negative reason, or if the student is trying to figure out what to do about um, an entry on the resume, best thing to do is to probably leave it out. I think so. Okay, thanks. So this is another one. Would obtaining a legal database certificate go under computer skills or additional certificates?
So when the person says legal database, are they speaking of maybe um, something specific to law students and their ability to use particular, okay, I'm saying yes. So I'm going to assume that person is answering the question, my question. So you could put it on the computer skills. Um, if you wanted it to stand out more in terms of you have this specific skill set related to the legal profession, then you could probably have a heading like technical legal software or something like that, like a subheading. So you have computer skills as your main heading, and then you have a subheading which points to the fact that this is something specific to the for people in the legal profession, and then you could list that particular. I don't know if it's probably LexisNexis or something like that. You could list it. You could list it there, and then you have another subheading where you have your other computer skills if you wanted to stand out. Yeah.
Okay, here's another question. Should you include activities such as owning an online small business while going to school, or will this be a conflict of interest?
This is kind of similar to the entrepreneurship question. Um, I would say if you have an online business, um, I think it's okay to again include, if you built a website with an e-commerce feature where people could click and shop, I think that's worth talking about you the fact that you use those skill sets. I will say for an employer, if it's a very well developed business that's, could come across as like it's taking up a lot of your time, you don't um you don't send your resume in a vacuum. So you may need to let the employer know that yes, you have a business that you're running, but your time is available and flexible, and you are committed to working the working hours that the employer would require you to work. If you feel like it's a conflict of interest, maybe you're doing the exact same type of business that the person who's hiring you to do, then um, I think it's important to be transparent and, the last thing you want to do is appear as if you're being dishonest. So I think it's important to be transparent. And if the employer is not comfortable, then there is that possibility that you may lose out on that opportunity. Yeah, but you don't want it to be where maybe you have a business that's very similar to your potential employer's business, and then they find out about it after. That may that could possibly create issues. So I think it's important to be transparent, and you do your best to alleviate the employer's fears, and you know the outcome will be the outcome.
Okay, thanks, Andy. There are a few questions here which I think may have already been addressed when you were going through your presentation. So I'm just going to list, instead of doing it one by one, I'm just going to list all of them. So students are asking basically about the content or what goes into a resume. So for example, what's the length of a resume? What's too long? What's too short? References, hobbies, date or month. I'm not sure if that has to do with date of birth. And there's a question that says, is it necessary to add a copy of your ID card and the academic certificates when submitting a resume? And there are a lot of few questions about the page limit, especially.
Okay, so an ideal page limit for your resume is 1 page. Like I was saying earlier in the presentation, see your resume as a very customizable document. So what you put in one resume may not be what you put in the next resume. You always want to put the information that's going to sell you the best for the particular job that you're going after. Or even if it's a magnet resume where it's sort of like it's not for a specific job, but you're sending it out in the hopes that it's going to you're going to get some feedback from a potential employer. Even in that resume, you may still have it targeted in a particular way in the hopes that you will get through with something. So you may not, if you are somebody, you have a lot of experiences, and if you put everything down, it's going to be 3 pages, 2 pages, 4 pages. You can edit it to one page where you put the most relevant information, right? Um, so my advice is to get a resume to fit on one page. Um, if you have a lot of relevant experience and it's coming into 2 pages, okay. But first and foremost, let the resume fit on one page. Um,
They talked about hobbies, dates of birth,
okay, so you don't put your date of
which
birth.
you spoke about already.
Right. So that type of personal information, marital status, date of birth, religion, you know, you don't want you want people to focus on your skills. You don't want people to think about, you know, those other things. Are you too old? Are you too young? You know, let them focus on the skills and what you bring to the table, right? And date of birth, religion, and those things, employers, those are not prerequisites for most experience to get a job opportunity, to get a job or to be called in for an interview.
Any tips on hobbies?
You can put, I mean, if you have extracurricular activities, you're involved in clubs, you can have that section. If you're not formally in any extracurricular activities, but you have certain interests, I prefer the heading, that's just my personal preference. I prefer the heading interests versus hobbies. Um, you can include some, like if you do bike riding, you're not in a club, you don't ride with a professional bike riding club or even a amateur club, but you do enjoy exercising and bike riding and outdoor activities. You could create a section called interest and put something like that there. Again, I would, if you write, if you like to write and you maybe you have a blog or something, you could put that under interests as well. I try to recommend staying away from things like watching TV as an interest, but if you have interests such as what I just talked about, you could create that section.
Okay, thanks, Hans. Are there any special tips for submitting your resume online or via email, I should say?
I'm seeing somebody ask if gardening is an interest. Yes, it can be. Tips for submitting your resume online. Um, okay, so you could potentially email your resume to a recruiter. So if you're emailing your resume, I think it's really important to know that recruiters get lots of resumes. So always save your resume as your name, right? And maybe the position. So that's always a good tip so that they see immediately. Because even for us from where we sit, we ask you all to email your resumes to us, and we have a naming protocol for the file for what you call the save the resume as. Because sometimes students will just put resume. But if you get hundreds of resumes, can you imagine you get hundreds of resumes and everybody decides to call it resume? So you want to make sure, first of all, you save it. In our context, save it as we have asked you to save it. In a context of sending it to a potential employer, if it's a vacancy that you're applying to, well, then you could probably put your name and the vacancy, save it as a file. So that's one tip I would give. In terms of the email, some people make the email the cover letter, and then they attach your resume, or the body of the email might just say, please see cover letter and resume attached, and then you email it. In the case of the recruitment fair, this virtual recruitment fair, essentially you are uploading your resume onto the platform. Like I said, it's more of a general resume, and still have your targeted resume, so you can give that to employers when you reach out to them. Sorry, when you reach out to them and talk to them. So those would be my tips. Something else I was going to say, actually. If you're emailing your resume to us, it would be better for you to do it as a Word document and not as a PDF. Just because sometimes if we have the time, maybe you have like a small typo, we'll fix it for you before we send it. It doesn't always happen, but it's always better to send it as a Word document.
Okay, thanks, Andy. What do you think about if someone is working in a relative's company? Is it unprofessional to list that on the resume?
No, it's not. You can include if you've worked in your family business, you can include that. That's a valid experience. I would say where it becomes tricky is the references part of it. If your parent maybe is your boss and they're the recommender, then you probably need a more neutral recommender. But you can still put it as work experience.
Do you have any advice for someone who's extremely nervous?
Okay, so this is for the recruitment fair. I would say just take deep breaths. Well, first of all, prepare, right? If you've done everything beforehand, that's going to help deal with the nerves, right? So make sure you put out your outfit beforehand. You tried it on, you know how you look, you know how you look on camera, I should say. You feel good, you have your backdrop, everything is ready. So that's going to help with the nerves. The other thing is when you're in the platform and you're getting ready to interact, I would say, um, just take deep breaths. And just, try to be calm, like I was saying, practice on a company that maybe you're not that interested in. But so like if you are not as good as you would like to be, you just sort of like get those nerves out. Because once you break the ice and you have that first conversation, you start to feel better and more confident, and a lot of times you're not as bad as you think you're sounding, so that's what I would say. And guys, just remember to do your research on the companies. When we send out the list, there'll be information about the company in that recruitment booklet, but do additional research, have they been in the news recently, just kind of know what's going on with that company. But yeah, just take deep breaths, try to be calm, I would say don't over practice. So like you would have certain prepared responses, like, things like tell me about yourself and, your long-term career goals and your short-term career goals. And you would have a sense of what you want to say for that. But if you rehearse it too much, where it's almost like you're reciting a poem or something, when you get nervous, sometimes when you get nervous, everything just kind of flies out of your head. So don't try to remember those types of responses, verbatim. Just kind of have a sense, okay, first I'm going to start off talking about my passion for accounts and numbers, and then I'm going to move into my short-term career goals. So you kind of have a sense of the broad steps that you're going to take when you're introducing yourself, but you're not going to memorize it word for word. And I guess the beauty of it being virtual as well, maybe you could have some keywords as a reminder to kind of trigger So it could be in front of you. Maybe you might stick a post-it on your screen, and you might have some keywords where, okay, passionate, and it's okay, this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm passionate about numbers. And then, so that's a little bit of an advantage for it being virtual.
Okay, thanks, Nandi. Just gonna wrap up just now. Just one or two more questions. So I'm gonna just try to lump them in together because they're similar. We have some non-national students. We have some students from the medical and nursing field, and you're just wondering if there are any special opportunities for them or any special requirements that they need to participate in the fair.
In terms of requirements, and the requirements would be the same, Wi-Fi, laptop. Um, I would say that we, at this point, we've been reaching out to regional companies. There is one regional um, opportunity um, to work virtually that we have so far. But I would say participating in the fair and letting us have your information is still good, because companies reach out to us after the fair. So there might be regional opportunities even after. Because, some companies, if they couldn't participate, we'll have a conversation with them after the fact of the fair. So that could always happen. So you can still register, sign up for the fair. We have your information should anything come up. I mean, the fair is smaller than its, previous years. The economic climate, as you all know, is not is a bit more on the challenging side, but there's still opportunities. And even if it doesn't happen right away, you never know. It could happen in the months to come. So I would say do not count yourself out. Still participate, get the experience.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. There are two questions here with respect to the format of the resume. Do I
Mhm.
have to format my resume for each company I'm interested in, or just have a general one with all of the information or with everything in it to be specific? And should you include a description of your roles in your job experience?
Okay, so you want to target your resume for each company. Right now, each company, in some cases, are going to have a variety of opportunities. So one company might be hiring accountant, IT, HR. I'm just calling a random example. So in that case, you would obviously kind of identify which of these positions I'm best suited for, and you will tailor your resume in that way, right? So it's both company and position, because two different companies could have an HR position, and you might find that you might tweak it a little bit based on the company, right? That's one answer. The general resume you will have, right? And that's the resume you will upload to the platform when you're registering on the actual virtual fair platform, right? And the general resume is just sort of like um it's sort of like a overall picture of who you are and what skills you have to offer, right? It's just a little bit of the different skills that you have, right? Versus, if it was a more targeted resume, you might leave out certain things just because those things are not being emphasized, or you may de-emphasize it. You may not emphasize it as much. So I think that's two things that I covered there, Sabrina.
And they should put a description of you should put a description of your role in your job experience, and it doesn't have to be too long, just a couple lines, you think?
Right. So your roles, and yes, that's a key part. So remember, the resume. So remember, the resume is trying to get you an interview, right? And remember, the resume document is a document that is telling the recruiter, I have these skills, I have these abilities, right? So the work experience part of the resume is sort of like an opportunity for you to show where you used either your soft skills, your transferable skills like communication, leadership, teamwork, um, problem solving, negotiation, to show those soft skills in a real world context, whether that was, a company, or maybe you got the bulk of that experience volunteering for an NGO or something like that. So you want to demonstrate, it's sort of like proof that I have organizational skills because I worked here and I reorganized their filing system, or I maintained their filing system and made it easier for them to retrieve information, make work processes easier, etc., etc. Right? So yes, the the work section, you definitely want to talk about your responsibilities. And you would put, if you had like a job title, you would put the job title, and you would put under the job title, you would put that's when you would bullet, just as I discussed, starting with your power resume verb, and you will bullet the different responsibilities that you had, but making sure that inside of that you're sort of highlighting a skill that you used.
Okay, thanks, Nans. That's all the questions for today. Thanks, everyone. But I just wanted, Nandi, to ask you, because we have a lot of second year students on the platform today, will we be able to give them some information on how the students who would have completed the ETP, um, how can they access or get their certificate? And
Okay.
also, we just want to let students know where and how they can get the recording of today's session and how they can access the LinkedIn recording as well. So the LinkedIn recording, today's recording, and the collection of ETP certificates.
Okay. So with regards to ETP, I'll be sending out a final email just updating everybody on what's next. Essentially, we'll be going through the database of all the participants and updating their participation in all the different things. And once we've done that, we will send out an email to everyone to let them know that that stuff has been completed, and then we will send out the email. So that's not going to be until maybe um, next month, where you will see, if we'll send out the email talking about completion of certificates, completion of the program, and you have received a certificate. So you can look out. There'll be an update email giving you that information, and then a subsequent email after that letting you know that you have received your certificate. In terms of this recording, we do like to edit our recordings, but given the short time frame, we might have to um, do a very rough edit before we send it out to you all. But we are hoping to follow up with an email for everybody here today with the information about critiquing on Thursday, plus um, a link to our bootcamp, resume bootcamp, where you get a little bit more detailed information about putting together your resume. And this session, we could see if we could include this session. We would really try to put that together for you guys. Um, and then the LinkedIn session, you'll have to look out for an email where we could share that link for the LinkedIn session. We could see if we could make that available to you guys as soon as possible.
Nandi, there's just one last question that just came
Sure.
respect to religious activities. If you volunteered for church activities, would you leave out the denomination, as in, for example, Park Church, as opposed to Park Methodist Church?
No, you don't have to. A lot of I see it all the time in resumes. Students do a lot of community work, outreach work with their church, teaching, Sunday school, different things like that. And it's quite, um, it's fine. You can include it as part of, depending on your role that you play and what type, what section it would best fit in when you're creating your different sections. You can include it.
Okay, thanks, Andy. That's it for questions for today.
So we have our evaluation. They've been sharing the link while I've been answering questions. So you guys, we really appreciate your feedback. We do go through the feedback forms. So if you can just take a few minutes, it's really quick, it's really easy. You can give us your feedback. And thank you so much for coming out. Really hope that this session was helpful. And have a good rest of the afternoon and a good rest of the week.